The Roman numerals was a system devised and used by the ancient Romans, which has remained in use till modern times. We can still find clocks that incorporate the system, the most famous being the Big Ben. Although they are still somewhat used, they have been predominantly replaced by the simpler Arabic system, containing numbers from 0 to 9. Hence, some may not know what the Roman numeral notations are meant to represent. If you're that person though, you are quite lucky, as this video will allow you to read numeral notation like a true Roman. So, let's get started. Let us begin with the basic numerals. There are 7 known symbols that are used in modern style. I for 1, V for 5, X for 10, L for 50, C for 100, D for 500, and M for 1000. Now that we are familiar with the basic numerals, let us introduce ourselves to additive notation, which simply means that values can be added together to make a new value. For example, we know I is 1, so 1 plus 1 would be I plus I, which would give you II. Seems simple, right? So how about you write the first 10 Roman numerals? I'll give you some time. Finished? Great. So, I, II, III, IV, V, VI, VII, VIII, IX, and X. Did you get it right? Well done. Wait, what do you mean I'm wrong? The 4 and 9 are incorrect? It should be III and VIII. Well, both IV and III notations are correct, which can be confusing. Essentially, III and VIII uses additive notation, while IV and IX incorporate subtractive notation. Subtractive notation can be used to concise the numerals so that it's faster to write them. Instead of III, it simply takes the smaller integer from the larger to get a new value. In the case of Arabic numbers, it would be 5 minus 1 equals 4. So in the Roman numerals, it would be V minus I, which gives us IV. Other examples can be used for the numbers like 40, which is XL instead of XXXX, or 900, which is CM instead of DCCCC. Some variants of the subtractive notation can be described as above standard. 17 would typically be written as XVII, 10 plus 5 plus 1 plus 1. However, in this instance, it was written as IIIXX, 20 minus 3, which equals 17. These two notations were the primary components for the Roman numeral system. However, the system was not perfect. It had a problem, being that the highest number achievable was 3,999, written as MMMCMXCIX, as a greater number could not have been written with the 7 symbols. As such, the 2 ways of writing large numbers were developed: the apostrophous and the vinculum. The apostrophous method used C for encasing numbers to denote thousands, tracing its origins from Etruscan numeral usage. Essentially, think of it like parentheses. If you encase an I, which is 1 in the C's, we'll get CI inverted C, which is 1,000, which would be used rather than M in ancient Roman times to represent 1,000, since the symbol was developed much later on. To raise it to another factor of 10, you add another parentheses, which would be CCI inverted C inverted C. The parentheses would go up to 3 times, so for I, the highest number would be 100,000, written as CCC I inverted C inverted C inverted C. The vinculum was a common alternative to the apostrophic system and was used during the imperial era around the Roman world. The Roman numerals would be multiplied by 1,000, indicated by a bar or overline. An IV would be 4, however adding a bar would make it 4000. VVX was 25, but also with a bar would be raised to 25,000. An extension of the vinculum was added, which features a three-sided box to indicate a multiple of 100,000. Do you know what this numeral would give us? No? Well, let's work it out. XIII is 13. It's inside the three-sided vinculum, so it'd be times by 100,000. 13 times 100,000 gives us 1.3 million. XXXII is 32. It's also in a vinculum, but only with a bar above it, so 32 times 1,000 gives us 32,000. Together, it would give us a sum of 1,332,000. We have covered two types of notations and two types of writing large numbers. So what's left? Well, the Romans used fractions. We know what fractions are, numerical numbers which can't be written as whole numbers. As such, they are expressed with a numerator and denominator. Although they used fractions, they used a duodecimal system which uses 12 as its base to make it easier to handle some of the fractions. Since they use a duodecimal system, they use 12 fractions each with their own name and numeral. 1/12 to 5/12 use dots as a symbol with the number of dots corresponding to the number of the numerator. 1/12 is named uncia, 2/12 sextans, 3/12 quadrants, 4/12 trians, 5/12 quinsuks. 6/12 introduces an S as a symbol and is called semis. From here on, we use additive notations, so 7/12, which is expressed as S dot, called septungs, 8/12 bes, 9/12 dodrans, or nonusium, 10/12 dextans, 11/12 dungs, and finally 12/12, which is represented by an I, which is of course the first symbol we learnt. We covered pretty much everything, except there is something else missing, or should I say nothing is missing, because 0 is a number that we haven't covered. That's because the Roman numeral doesn't need a 0, as it's a non-positional numeral system. But even though a written number was not present, the word nulla, Latin for none, was used to represent 0. Eventually the letter N was used for 0, but that was in 725 by Saint Bede during the early Middle Ages. The origins of the Roman numerals go back to the neighbours which inhabited the land for much longer. The Etruscan symbols used were I, inverted V, X, arrow pointing up, and asterisk, representing 1, 5, 10, 50 and 100 respectively. What is interesting is they would write from right to left, so number 87 was written II, inverted V, XXX, upward arrow sign, instead of upward arrow sign, XXX, inverted V, II. The Romans adored to take and adopt other cultures. As such, much of the early Roman culture is derived from the Etruscans. They would take the I, X and asterisk from the Etruscans, but adopted their own signs to replace the inverted V and upwards arrow sign with V and downwards arrow sign respectively. The latter would develop over time and be flattened to represent an inverted T. By the time of Augustus, it would visualize the letter L. The symbol for 100 was written as an asterisk. However, over time, it would be changed to the letter C. This could be because the letter C was the initial letter of centum, Latin for 100. The notation for 500 and 1000 were denoted by V and X, overlaid with a box or circle, thus the 500 looked something like this, which would under Augustus's reign form into a D with a line through it. We know from the apostrophes that numbers are encased to raise its value. We can also partially raise it by only applying one of the parentheses So Ci inverted C is 1000, but I inverted C is 500, which graphically it looks like the letter D. In the case of 1000, the notation used was a circle X. By the time of Augustus, it would partially reflect the letter Greek phi, which would evolve into the now used M. So, there we have it, all you need to know about Roman numerals. It's trivial knowledge, really, since we always see Arabic numbers nowadays, yet there may be an instance where it'll come in handy.